This is Boxing Tickets NI in association with SB Sports in Chaco. We're delighted to be joined the whole way from Manchester with Ireland's Luke Caffrey. How are you, Luke?
How's it going, Steve? Thanks for having me on, mate.
It's a pleasure. Obviously, firstly, I want to start off by obviously happy belated birthday. I know we put a wee post up for you yesterday, but you're obviously on the coffees this morning. 26. Do you feel like an old man yet?
Just hung over from the last night's doner kebab. No alcohol, just a takeaway.
That's the joys of, I guess, of being a pro boxer and in between fights. You just can't sort of go off the rails too much. It's like your wee delights are a kebab and then it's back to it on a Saturday.
Yeah, my mind won't forgive me if I partied, so I've got to just keep a clean life. Have the takeaways as my alcohol now.
I guess I was sort of saying to you, I turn 40 next week, and you know, if I was to have a drink out of a hangover for a week, probably you're getting to the stage. I guess if you probably don't really drink that much, if you have a few, it's like, who hit me? You know, you think you've been fighting.
To forgive myself, I reckon. So it's not good.
Definitely isn't. So obviously you're originally from Dublin itself.
Yeah.
Russian Dublin, but obviously you're living in Manchester now. How's the weather in Manchester today? It looks very bright where you're at. Is the sun shining?
Yeah, it's class, isn't it? I was at the beach yesterday and everything. I was in Formby Beach. It was 18 degrees. So I couldn't complain one bit.
You know, the sun's shining here in Belfast today as well a wee bit. So hopefully we're going to have a good weekend, although I'll probably not see too much of outside with obviously Katie Taylor's fight tonight as well. So Sunday's going to be spent like a zombie.
Absolutely. Can't wait for that. What time is it at, you know?
I think about 3:15, I think, ring walks in the morning.
Alarm job, so.
Definitely is. Matchsticks, keep the eyes open. But obviously anybody we bring on for the first time, we sort of like the sort of go back, you know, probably back in time, sort of, in you know, what got you involved in the sport and things like that. What age did you start out boxing and why?
So, well, initially I always wanted to be a footballer, professional footballer. And then it just happened that a boxing gym and an MMA gym was starting literally just across the road from me. So it was only like a 5-minute run across the road, and I was there. It's called Rush Fight Academy. It was ran by my old head coach, Paul Kauser. And then I'm not even messing. I went for the first time and I was hooked, and that was it. I never looked back. I was hooked from the minute I walked in there, from obviously putting the gloves in, sparring, training, and I just never looked back.
Well, boxing's obviously, you know, I guess when you speak to boxers, obviously you can see, but there's so many people who's probably tried out the sport and probably walked away. Like I can remember the first time I sparred, and I got punched in the nose, and you know, and the eyes watered, and I was like, "Is this for me?" You know, it's like them doubts get hit in your head. It's once you get punched for the first time, you're going, "Can I take a punch?" You know, it's everybody wants to know, can they take a punch? Can I take a punch? And when I can't take a punch, they enjoy it. They want to come back for more. You know, boxing's it's probably the most, well, everybody says the toughest sport in the world, but it's one of them sports that probably you would love to see how many people's tried it out and probably walked away because they're like, I don't want to get punched. You know, so you have to sort of, as they say, have a screw loose somewhere to go actually get a thrill out of boxing.
Yeah. I've been punched plenty of times before I started boxing, so
you're well used to it.
It's just tweaking up the skills. I wasn't, obviously, it's just like where obviously I grew up. The things you need to be good at, obviously, was just football or fighting. So we all loved it. Like when the boxing gym opened, everyone that I hung around with, we all trained there, and it was great. So it was good to have the lads in the gym, and then I just took to it straight away. Like I started, and you'd swear I was boxing for years. It's just, I don't know, it's just whatever happened with my mind and how I adapted to the movement and the training. You just swear I boxed for years.
And what age was it you started out then?
I was 12.
12. So it's probably, you know, from a lot of ones we have, interviewed probably one of the most oldest. Sort of, you know, people started like 6 and 8 and things like that. So I guess at 12, you know.
Boy tree. Started at boy tree. And I remember going into my first leagues, my first Dublins and All Irelands. Everyone was boxing since they were like 8. And I felt like at that time, I felt like I was at such a disadvantage to these lads. But we'll get into that now in a bit when I enter my first competitions and stuff.
Yeah, and like, you know, I know that, you know, parents always like to have some sort of self-defense in kids. Like I can remember trying out karate as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, that was probably, you know, in the late 80s, probably there. I'm showing my age probably even more, but late 80s. And I think the first Karate Kid had come out, and, you know, everybody wants to be Daniel LaRusso. And it was like, you know, you go to it and then you're like, this is boring. You know, it's nearly as if you're going to a nightclub, but it's sort of all, you know, like the 80s sort of style.
Yeah.
And you're not able to, there's no contact and things like that. And I didn't enjoy it at all, you know, but parents wanted you to obviously they have some sort of self-defense. So I guess obviously growing up in Dublin as well, your parents wanted you to be able to defend yourself if somebody was trying to bully or something like that.
Yeah. I'm not too sure if they're ever worried about that, because to be honest, like I used to fight almost every day with my friends. Like we were big into like wrestling and stuff or whatever. And then it's just like we'd be fighting with different roads around like the corner or whatever. If I came back and if somebody said I would come back to my ma's, I always hit a punch. Like I was sent out the door and I was like, go punch him back. But it was like we just went like, so I don't think they were ever worried about me sort of like being bullied or definitely not bullying someone. I wasn't raised like that at all. But they knew I was tough and I had tough friends, and that was just due to me just having fights with my best friends, just falling out over little things, and then we just start punching each other. But like I wouldn't have it any other way. It was great.
Do you sort of believe, you know, being involved in sport as well? Do you probably, I guess every boxer is probably going to say that they agree with it as well, but obviously boxing should be part of the school curriculums.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, early interventions, especially within troubled children as well. I'm a big believer in that. I've seen it happen so many times where kids go off the rails, and that certainly happened to me in my past troubles and stuff like that with my family and stuff. And boxing just creates such discipline within kids as well. Like especially when they're out on the streets, it's a tough sport to do, and if they go into the gym and they're not the tough person anymore, and then it sort of gives them the inspiration. It's like, Jesus, I want to be the tough person in this gym to make them train hard and just keeps them off the streets and keeps them with a target and a goal. Especially now that amateur boxing is back up, it's great. But like for 2 years in Ireland, especially and in England, it was probably really difficult for the youths that were out of boxing, and then they were sort of exposed again to the dangerous world that we live in.
And you know, I guess with so much bullying and stuff going on in the world nowadays, like particularly with you know, when you started out boxing at 12, and then obviously when people knew you were a boxer, you know, I guess when you were fighting, you know, with your mates and things like that, once they knew you were into boxing, probably it was more so they're going, whoa, calm down, I know you're a boxer. You know, they sort of, you probably had less fights in the streets because of it.
Yeah, and I've seen it happen with kids that were bullied in the past in school and stuff. And next thing you know, these kids started coming to the gym, and next thing you know, they're fighting, and the bullying stops completely. And I've seen that firsthand. So it's an amazing thing to see, and nobody's picking on these people anymore. These people are going out and they're winning fights, like to overcome the bullying and then actually come into a competitive boxing match or a competitive mixed martial arts match and start winning. And just obviously the respect they've earned amongst the community, and just probably the fear that they put into the bullies as well.
It's probably something that, you know, it's school curriculum and things like that. I guess they probably look at insurance things and the fact that, you know, probably people at different categories, maybe people already boxing outside of school and things like that. But it's definitely something that I believe that school curriculum should get more involved with, because if it stops bullying.
They're doing it over here in my local area.
So it's
Queensbury Rap. I'll just give them a little shout out.
But, is that like an after school sort of club that's inviting them to your local boxing club, or what way is it ran?
Yeah, so they go to my boxing club in Northwich Boxing Fit Academy, and they run classes there, and it's just an early prevention. So if they get like obviously the warning signs or they're causing trouble outside of school, they'd assist with the counsellors in the school and bring them to the boxing gym. They'd meet the head coach Frank, or else they'd just use the facilities in the gym. And obviously I was as well, so it's good.
Definitely makes some difference for them as well. How many fights did you have as an amateur? When we look in box, right, you'd think you'd hardly ever box. I think it only shows about 4 fights on there.
It's a bit enough. Even my national fights, some of my national fights aren't on there. I've had 52 bouts as an amateur, and I had 8 losses. So I was very active when I was come through boy 3, boy 4, youth 1. And I stopped boxing then after youth 2. And that was just due to just recurring injuries. And I hate to say, obviously, it's one of the biggest regrets in my life. Like, I had ligament damage in my ankle. And I think that I just used that as an excuse, because I had such like a deprived sort of upbringing, because all I done really was train hard, never went out, never partied, seeing all my friends and they were having like the best time ever. And I'm in the trenches, like because I've always trained hard. Everyone around Dublin and in the circuit, in the boxing circuit and my age groups and all, they always knew me as a person like Jesus, like he trains hard, like he's a freak. If he doesn't beat you on skill, he'll beat you on fitness. Like, and I beat top boys on fitness. And I think that was it worked for me and it worked against me, because I never gave myself a break from it to enjoy myself. So I exposed myself then when I got injured to that life, and I started drinking and stuff then at about probably nearly pushing towards 18. And I got a job then. And then I honestly do think for the rest of my time until I returned to boxing, I was just running away from that problem. Because every day it ate me alive. Like, every day I was thinking, like, because I knew I had the talent to, like, my goals when I was a kid was Olympics. Like, I was going to get the tattoos of Olympics on me before I could even win a national title. Like, that's how much I believed in myself. And I knew I was always going to make it at that age. And then when I stopped due to injuries and exposed myself to that life, it was just sort of, I was running away from that problem every single day. Mm-hmm. And then returned to boxing then 21, 22. And then it's just been taken off since. And now I'm mentally better than ever.
It's I guess it's probably, I'm trying to probably put the words here, it's probably great to hear sometimes, a story like this, look, because there's so much of it happens, not even just within boxing, but even football and things like that. I know people that are obviously really good footballers, but because they like to have a drink at the weekends, they didn't decide that I'm not going to train and I'm not going to play a match. And they could have made it in England, they could have made it championship level and things like that. But you wonder how many boxers obviously, have an injury, or maybe have a defeat, and things like that, and then they go, this isn't for me, I'm going to go to the drink. But they could have had a good career, and then they get stuck in that cycle. I guess the thing for you is obviously, you've had that sort of bit of time away. You've sort of seen that the wrong sort of path that can sort of happen, and you're like, well, hold on, boxing actually showed me the right path, so it brought you back to yourself again, and probably made you more hungrier.
Honest to God, like when I think back on it now, like there's nothing I changed. Like, obviously the pandemic stopped me from making my debut probably nearly 3 years ago now, so obviously that's delayed it a little bit. But I still wouldn't have changed the process I'm going through right now. And that's making my debut in 2022. I still wouldn't have changed that ever. I wouldn't even go back, because those years where I went away and I was working, I was living in England, living in Spain and stuff, that just made me who the person I am today. And to be honest, I can sit here right in front of you right now and just say I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm the strongest I've ever been. I'm boxing better than I've ever boxed before in my life. So there's nothing that I would change, not one single thing. And I had a great...
Probably life experience. I'd probably say, you've had experience of other things in life, and it's probably helped you to grow up and probably understand, because like people will say, like, even me myself, I would say when I was 16, I was probably one of the most immature people you could find. Even in my early 20s, I was going out drinking every weekend. You're sort of going, what's the point? It gets to this stage, you have to sort of sicken yourself from it and go, what's the point? What do I want to do in life? What do I want to achieve? And whenever you have a talent as a boxer, it's sometimes re-engaging your brain to go, well, here, hold on, I can actually do something as a boxer and get back into it.
Yeah. And it wasn't like that I was just drinking every weekend and stuff, because it wasn't like that. Like, I probably stopped. I drank maybe from 18 to 21. And then I just had a career change. And I was boxing again at 21. But I had a career change and an opportunity to run a hotel. And it was great. I learned a lot from it. But I didn't start drinking again. Like I probably drank for a few years, and I learned a lot in those few years about myself. And now obviously I've changed jobs and stuff in 2019. I changed jobs, so that's when I've been training. So I've been training flat out since 2019, and I was in that career for about 2 years, the previous career, and that was working probably 5-6 days a week, 70 hours a week. So I didn't even have a chance to train or anything like that. But
obviously, looking back on obviously your amateur career, how whenever your first defeat, was it sort of, now you've obviously had eight defeats as an amateur, but whenever you had your first defeat as an amateur, did it sort of, I guess you can take things in different ways. Sometimes, you get sort of a bit of huffy going, I was robbed and things like that. How did obviously you find a defeat as an amateur? Were you really a bad loser, or?
No, never a bad loser. No, I was a bad winner, if anything. Because I always had very high standards, and if I didn't box very well and I won, I'd be really upset with myself, and I'd beat these kids by like 10 points. That was the old point system. Like, and I go back to the corner, I'd be annoyed. I'd be like, oh, I boxed terrible. And I was like, Luke, you just won by 12 or 10 or 12 points. Like, you boxed grand. And the losses, obviously, they hurt. They hurt a lot because how much effort us boxers go through, and how much like we're in the trenches, and the emotional just drainage when you lose. It is awful. It's the worst feeling in the world. But it makes losses just make you stronger. That's a fact. You bounce back, and you're like, right, I'm going to get him next year. I'm going to get him next year. And that's how it was in the nationals. It was like, it's the same people beating you. Like, right, I'm going to get him. You know how to win.
It's a target on their back for the next year, going, I'm coming straight for you. I don't care if it's the first round, the semi-final, or the final. I'm getting you.
Yeah, that's it.
But I guess it's that competitiveness. Sometimes, whenever you lose and you're going, right, well, how can I get this back? It's like, I have to wait the next year, I have to wait a certain competition. And then the person doesn't enter the competition, you're going, how am I going to get you back? I want to revenge my loss, but if they're not in the competition, then you're going, well, what do I do? And it's like, just keep the head down and keep focused.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're a kid, the weight classes are changing all the time. People are moving up in weights, moving down in weights, getting bigger than you. You're getting bigger.
That's the thing. Obviously, growing up, obviously in the sport as well, you obviously different weight classes and things like that. Where you started out, and the next year you're going to fight, and you're going, I'm looking forward to fighting Jimmy, and Jimmy's 7 foot now, and you're going, who stretched them out between the trees,
Yeah.
But obviously, it's I guess a lot of fun times for you with an amateur boxing. I guess your few years out of the sport is probably only helping to reignite the fire now you've turned pro.
Yeah, I loved amateur boxing, and that's what I say to all the amateurs. Like, because I'm starting to see a lot of amateurs obviously turning professional very early in their career, and they're only having like up to 10 fights, 20 fights and stuff. And I was like, look, just keep your head down, just fight as often as possible, as much as possible. And it seems to be a different attitude over in the UK than to Ireland, a little bit with matchmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Amateurs, like, they're like, I'm not going to fight this kid, you're not going to fight that kid. When I was an amateur, we just fight anyone. We didn't even know who we were fighting. It wasn't like a big celebration. We were just fighting in club shows and like on a Sunday, and like there'd be barely any crowd there. Well, like, it seems like over here, amateur shows are pro shows. People are selling out arenas.
They just pick and choose who they want to fight.
No, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of fights going on, a lot of amateur fights compared to Ireland. I think we fight a lot more in Ireland, to be honest. And there seems to be more of like a pro approach in Manchester, which is good, like, because it's preparing them for the pros and stuff. But experience you can't buy experience.
Mm-hmm.
You want to fight twice a week, 3 times a week if you can. Like, fight every month, a couple of times, if possible. But like, like everyone's got like their names on the shorts now over here, and they got sponsors all over them in the amateurs. Well, we used to fight in vests, blue and red.
I guess that sort of helps whenever they do turn pro. They sort of establish sponsors and things like that. But it's I guess the uncertainty in amateur boxing at the moment. Obviously, do we know if the Olympics going to happen in 2024 and 2028? You know, a lot
Yeah,
of people, it's in the amateur setup now, are going, they hold
yeah,
off and hope to qualify for the Olympics and they'll not happen, or they just turn pro.
yeah, yeah. It's age dependent, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
got to be.
it definitely is. And I
Plus,
guess, you know, it's
talented 18. Obviously, the lads who are very experienced and they've already had those experiences fighting with no head guard and fighting, have loads of fights, turn over. Or if they've got a good style, turn over. Good pro style. It's quite different, the two sports.
the stigma, obviously, or the stigma around professional boxing when you were coming up as an amateur, did you obviously always believe that every professional boxer was a millionaire?
Not too sure. There's only a fairly small amount of pro boxers that I sort of look up to and want to be when I was growing up. But yeah, there definitely is a stigma that people are making a lot of money in pro boxing, and it's not true. Well, if it is, I haven't seen it yet.
It'd be nice to have, wouldn't it? Who would your idols have been? Who would you sort of looked up to in the sport growing up?
My old coach Paul Kowser probably would have been my first idol. He was a very good amateur himself. I think he had about 80 odd amateur fights. I'm pretty sure he won a nationals, boxed Frankie Gavin and all for England. So he would have been my first idol. And then YouTube and stuff was obviously quite big when I was younger. So it quickly moved to Floyd Mayweather, and then he just transformed me, who I was, and my work ethic, because there's nobody's got work ethic like Floyd Mayweather. So I'm pretty sure if you ask anyone my age who their idol is in boxing, any young amateur in boxing, they'd say, yeah, it's Floyd. And it shows even to this day, even like back in 2000 and, geez, I can't remember when I started, 2010 or something. It shows that he's still the most dedicated athlete. Nothing else substitutes hard work and dedication.
He's what, about 42 now? I think he's actually having another exhibition fight now in June on top of a tower or something in Dubai.
Yeah.
You know,
he's fighting on the helipad on the, geez, what's that massive structure in Dubai? I can't remember, but yeah, I know.
And he'll probably make another 100 million out of that. You know, but fair play to him. He dedicated his life to the sport. He's kept himself in good nick even when he's retired, and he's going to make a fortune out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, he deserves it. He deserves everything he gets, because he sacrificed his whole life. Never drank, never smoked. He's just an idol for any young person.
Yeah, I remember him obviously getting robbed in the Olympics, and obviously at that stage then it was like, you know, you're fed up with boxing and things like that, and turns pro and never loses again. And it's like that loss just redefined who he was and probably made him hungrier.
Yeah, it's him and Andre Ward as well. He's another. It's them two that are my two idols. Andre Ward hasn't lost since he was 12.
It's mental.
I think he's had nearly 300 fights or something, amateur fights or something like that. He's had a lot anyway. He's had a lot. Yeah, not lost since he was 12. So, but he's just another person, just dedicates his life to the sport, and there's no substitute for hard work.
Definitely not. So when you were sort of mentioning, obviously before the pandemic, you're sort of turning over. Like, what stage when did you leave Dublin? They obviously moved to Manchester. Obviously, you were saying that you'd been living in Spain and things like that. When did you leave Dublin?
I left Dublin straight after, probably after my injuries. And then, as mentioned, I think I was running away from the career I could have had in boxing. So my whole early, after I was 18 till about 20 or 21, I was just running away from that person who I could have been. So who I was at 17 versus who I was at 20 is two different people. You wouldn't even know that, like, he wouldn't have spotted us really, and you'd be like, no, that's not the same person. So I was just running away from myself, and I moved to London, and I was just working in bars. And then I met some friends over in London. That's when I moved to Marbella, and I was just I lived in Marbella for like 8 months. And then I'm trying to think of what date it was. I think it was about 2016 or 2017. I moved to England, and I went straight back into the gym then. So I had some more amateur fights in England, and then I got an opportunity then for a job in the hotel for fairly decent money, and I took the money.
As you do, you're always going to follow the money.
Well, I had my ideas and goals were different. It's weird because I was just like, oh, I just want to buy a house. You know what I mean? You're sort of going on these goals, just buy a house, like, of what people are expecting of you, really, instead of following your dreams. It's like, just buy a house, get a good job, then you're secure. When I should have said, no, actually, I'm going to go full speed ahead on the boxing.
Stick to the boxing. And obviously, fighting in as an amateur in England, they obviously then turn pro. Did you find much of a difference, obviously, in the gyms in England, obviously, with the amateur boxing and things like that? Did you find there was much of a difference, or were you sort of, like, I probably think of one of my favourite films, is it Warrior? Remember, obviously, the two brothers in MMA, and one's sort of unknown, and he goes into the gym and sparks a big contender out, and people don't know who he is and giving him no credit. Did you were you like a sort of ghost in the gym where people didn't know where you were and they're sort of trying to match you in fights to see where your level was?
Not particularly. No, not particularly, unless I was going and doing sparring elsewhere. But I was sort of like, I just didn't lose it when I come back into the gym. It's like I never left, in a way. It was obviously just lost a bit of sharpness and stuff. So I was able to establish myself straight away, and I'm quite I'd like to think I'm a friendly enough person, so to make friends and stuff. And I think when you see, it doesn't take long to know someone's a fairly decent boxer. Like, by the way, the shadow boxer, you just turn around, you're like, right, he can box. You know straight away. So I managed to earn their respect very quickly.
The telltale signs are always there. It's like their boots and their gloves and what way they wrap their hands, and then they're going the way they're hitting the bag, and you're going, he's definitely, you can't fake boxing, so you can't. And how did obviously turning pro come about then? Obviously you're managed by Johnny Roy.
Yeah, Johnny Roy Promotions, yeah. And he's my promoter and obviously my manager, wild guy. We were in the middle of the pandemic when I started training again. It was just my absolute saviour. During the pandemic, without that, Jesus, I don't know how I would have made it through. Because I'm one of them. I have to go to the gym every day. Every day I have to go to the gym. Like, without fail, I have to do something. If I don't, I beat myself up massively. So obviously my head coach is Frank Collins in Boxing Fit Academy in Northwich. And we had so many discussions for years, because obviously I boxed under him for a fair few years until I changed career. And I wanted to win a national title in the UK. That was my goal. I wanted to win, obviously, the area title and then go for the nationals as a senior. And we just kept on having the discussion, and the pandemic was happening. Then it was just like, look, will we just turn professional and just give it all to, obviously, professionals? Professionals are fighting now, so we'll be able to get you some fights and stuff. And then, so Frank was reaching out to all the boxing managers he knows around the northwest of England. I've been accepted before, before I even demonstrated my skills, by obviously a few managers. They were interested, or they knew me from the amateurs and stuff. But Johnny Roy wanted to see me. Johnny Roy wanted to see me. He wanted to see how I was performing, because obviously he knows I didn't box for a couple of years. So I went down to the gym and I sparred one of his undefeated pros, and it was all out war for 6 rounds, and it was really hard. And at this stage, I was in the middle of the pandemic, so I didn't get any sparring. There was no sparring, so I don't think I sparred for 2 years. I probably sparred once against a pro MMA fighter, and then I went into sparring. It was Josh Padley. He's an undefeated prospect, and we had war for 6 rounds, and that's how I was introduced to pro boxing, and how different pro boxing is to amateurs, because I don't even think I sparred a pro boxer before then. And just how clever he was, because I was all out for the first 3 rounds, and I'm lighting my toes and showing my amateur skills, and he's just slowly, I'm hitting him, and he's just slowly walking me down, making me work without even me knowing that, geez, he's making me work here massively more than I need to. So it's just very clever, very eye-opening. It was very good. It was good sparring. Obviously, he was more experienced than me, so he did get the better of the sparring, and I was invited again. Well, I had the discussion with Johnny. He was like, look, I can see you've got skills, but now I want to see how you adapt to the pros, because you're very amateur style. You got very amateur style. he's like, I'd like to invite you back up to sparring and we can go again and see if obviously you can prove yourself. So I was like, grand, I've got about a month to work on things. So I went back to the gym straight away, working on my inside game, working on planting my feet. And I don't even think I managed to get one more sparring. It was just more pad work and shadow boxing and mentoring from my coach. Next thing you know, like a week and a half later, Johnny Roy rings up and he's like, right, got sparring for you this Friday. You ready? I was like, for God's sake, you didn't give me much time to develop into the pros. So I went back up again, and it was from the first round. I can't even remember the sparring, to be honest. It was just pure adrenaline rush because I wanted that contract more than anything in the world. And from the first round, I went in there and I stood toe to toe, and I was like, right, 6 rounds and killing each other. But I can't remember anything, so I don't even know who won the spar, to be fair.
He's a both, obviously, he's a both saying in the future, oh, I won such and such, and going, well, I don't have a clue. You know, you see two fight, you know, two guys go to fight and they're going, yeah, I knocked you down in sparring, and like he would be going, yeah, I knocked you down. You're going, did you? I can't remember the spar at all. You know, you generally can't remember it.
The only thing is I actually can't remember because there was so much on the line for me, and like this was such a dream of mine since I was a kid. I was like, I have to do this. Like, I have to get this contract. It was like, there's nothing that's going to stop me from getting it. And obviously, I wasn't at my best or anything, but it was just pure heart. That was all. That whole spar was just me, just going like, he's got my contract. I'm getting it.
Probably a good way to do it. Sometimes, you know, you obviously have to earn your contract to get into professional boxing, and I guess it opens your eyes before you sign a contract and the pressure's put on to go, am I actually worth it? You know, I've heard of it a few times here. Obviously, people having to box off with the BUI and things like that to get a fight, you know, to get a license. And I guess it's smart ways sometimes to make sure that somebody's not going to go overawed somewhere.
Yeah, and that's what it was. So I spent a lot of time trying to prove myself then. Because I knew I wasn't boxing at my best, I only thought, I was like, geez, I just need to box as good as I boxed when I was an amateur a couple of years ago. And then I wasn't boxing at that level just yet. So I was like, right, I need to just keep training, keep coming. And I wanted to just keep coming down to the gym. So I actually train with Johnny Roy now as well. So I train with my head coach in boxing, Frank Collins in boxing bit. I train with him every day. But I also train in the mornings and in the evenings. But I also train with Johnny Roy Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays in Manchester. So my mentality was he only seen me in sparring twice. And both of those times in sparring, it was heart over skill. And it was like adrenaline and all that. So I just had that mindset where I was like, I need to prove myself to this guy. And I wanted to keep coming down. And I kept coming down. I kept sparring, kept training, kept improving. And now I feel like me and Johnny have such a good bond that, like, I know he knows my talent now. He knows my skills. He knows where I can go in the sport. And he's got my 100% backing now. And I proved myself to him.
And that's what it's all about. Like you only made your debut just over 2 months ago, and you've 2 fights already. So I guess that probably shows the confidence within them to obviously get you in there. They have 2 fights so quick back to back. I guess it's probably, as you say, if it a few years out of the ring, you're sort of trying to get back into it. As these fights, obviously, the standard of fighter you're having, they're journeyman level fights, but they're there for a reason to help you adjust and everything else.
Yeah.
Did these fights coming close together, obviously, they help bring more out that you probably had as a teenager that you're sort of still trying to get back into, obviously, the swing of things? Or what's the idea of being out so often?
It's just exposure, really. It's just, look, I love fighting and I love boxing. I love the sport, and I just want to, without obviously getting too far ahead of myself, I want to just gain as much experience as possible. So I aim to fight probably 5 or 6 times this year. And just like my next fight's going to be a 6-rounder as well. So again, just expose myself to that 6-round boxing fights and just get more experiences, most experiences possible. With my first one, obviously, it was just like, geez, I was very relaxed. I was sparring well. I trained a lot. And I was just like, right, just get the W. That's all I cared about, was just getting the W. And I had a double ear infection for that fight. So I was a little bit worried not that worried, but like anyone who's boxed before and had a double ear infection will know why. So I was just like, right, just get the W, and then the next fight I'll be able to show my skills. So I had that first fight, and I was sort of like, I was really annoyed at myself. I've never even rewatched the fight,
Mm-hmm.
Not once I rewatched it. I just couldn't face it. Just because I just used my amateur skills, really. I just picked them off. It was easy. I was waiting for him to throw shots back, but he didn't throw the shots back. He was just throwing a looping right hand. And he had a bit of pop, so I didn't want to get hit with it. So I don't think he caught me once, to be fair, for the whole fight. But I didn't give the fans really what they wanted to see. So my second fight was where I was like, right, I need to sort of show what sort of skills I have, and to sort of get people back on my side, to say, look, I am as good as I was as an amateur. I'm better. Now you need to get on my side and believe me as much as I believe in me.
It's obviously very important with fans as well, because obviously, it's not just, you're not just a boxer. Obviously, you have to be able to sell tickets as well. So you sort of, every time you get in the ring, you're sort of giving yourself an addition for fans to go buy me tickets. It's sort of like you're doing a promotion of yourself, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
my name's like Caffrey. I'm a boxer. I'm in the ring to show you the best of what I have. Support me in my next fight. That's pretty much what it feels like in boxing, doesn't it?
You're just marketing yourself every time, aren't you? So you got to bring something different to the ring, and I think I do. If you watch how I box and my style, I think it's quite fan friendly, and people like it. So that's why I think the next fight I'm going to sell 3 times, 4 times as much tickets, because the reception I've got since my last fight has been brilliant, especially from back home in Dublin. I have a lot of people now hopefully coming to my next fight in July 1st.
And I guess, like being being Irish, and obviously Manchester's not a bad thing, because obviously, it's not so hard to get to and things like that. But I've always regarded Manchester as being pretty much like home. It's working class areas and everything else. Have you found that obviously it's been easy to make friends and sort of market yourself well in Manchester, being Irish, because everybody knows what the Irish are all about?
We get a lot of respect over here. A lot of people may think differently, but like I've never had nothing but respect ever since I moved to England and Manchester, and especially from other gyms and stuff. We're held in such a high pedestal, us Irish, and especially for boxing. So earning their respect and getting the support off them has been amazing. I've never had one single bit of criticism from being where I'm from over here.
And it definitely obviously bonds well. There's been plenty of obviously amazing nights in Manchester for all the Irish fighters. So, I think the Manx obviously look at the Irish and go, they're pretty much just one of our own,
Exactly.
Which obviously helps well. Obviously your first 2 fights, your first was at welterweight, your second was at super welterweight. What weight class would you ideally be campaigning at? I guess as you're still learning the trade, you're not going to get the championship sort of weight and things like that. But what weight class will you ideally want to be fighting at normally?
I think at this stage of my career, I think 147 pounds. So welterweight. I walk around about 150, so I'm only 3 pounds over the welterweight limit. My last fight, I was at 154, but I was eating to make that weight, to be fair. And it was day of weigh-in, so obviously you don't want to be cutting any weight 2 hours before you fight. So I was eating curries that week. And I was smashing pasta and was a chili first thing in the morning all day before the weigh-in. I still managed to make weight, so I wasn't worried. My first fight, I think the journeyman weighed in about, I don't know how many over, because the fight was actually meant to be at welter, 147.
Mm.
I think he weighed in about 157, 158.
It's a mental thing sometimes, isn't it? With boxing, your opponent was 10 pretty much just over 10 pound heavier than you.
158.
So he was 158 and you were 148, so there's just over 10 pound of difference.
I was told then that he's going to weigh in a little bit heavier. I was like, no worries, I'll have a bit of food and stuff. I wasn't expecting him to weigh in that much heavier. It doesn't bother me anyway. Skills pay the bills at the end of the day.
And it's like whenever you have that, sometimes when it's so far, like sometimes, I guess the belief's there from your team whenever they see that there's so much of a difference, and they go, "I'll be all right, it'll be fine," And I guess that's what the good thing about obviously you know, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of journeymen out there that if they really wanted to fight properly, they could probably
Yeah,
make it at a good level. But when you know, obviously, you're going in against a journeyman, he's probably, if he wins, he loses himself work, you know. So it's like it's nearly a game you can sort of have as they sort of look at all the boundaries, you know. If
yeah,
if there was going to be an upset win somewhere, they'd be more devastated than the actual fighter that lost, you know, because they're
yeah,
going, I can't get another fight for a month now. You know, who's going to want to fight me because I'll have won.
yeah,
But your team having your confidence, they know that even though there was 10 pound of difference, they were still happy to let you in for your debut. Like they weren't going to tell you, no, you can't fight. You know, your
yeah,
debut dream's been ruined because
yeah,
somebody's overweight.
yeah. That was it.
You'll never forget your debut either. I guess that's what they say, and you always never forget your debut. You could probably have amazing nights in boxing, but you'll always remember that night you made your debut.
I definitely will. Yeah, it was an amazing night. It was a great achievement, great accomplishment. I probably at some stages of my life I didn't know if I ever would have a debut. So it was definitely a massive achievement. I was just the start of the journey. That's what it was.
Particularly with COVID and everything else, and obviously now that COVID's out of
Yeah,
the way, that it's relenting your dreams and obviously stuck back in there. The Prodigy nickname, where did it come from? And like when I think of obviously the Prodigy, obviously as in the band.
band.
Is that what it's all about?
So it was funny actually. I got a funny story about that. The Prodigy. As I went back training, well, I was only starting off with Johnny Roy, and I was training up in Manchester, and I was wearing the Prodigy on my back in a jumper, like a training jumper that I've got. And he was like, "The Prodigy." He's like, "You into that, are you?" I was like, "No, that's my fight name." He obviously thought it was the band as well, but the Prodigy name came from, obviously, do you know what the Prodigy means? What it stands for?
No, I don't think so.
So it pretty much means like a kid with a natural sort of talent or like born to do something. So that was given to me by my old head coach Paul Kelser after my first season in Dublin. And when I went in, I had 4 fights in the Dublin leagues, and I won that. Won the Dublin leagues. Then I had 4 fights in the Dublin championships, won that. But in the final, I boxed the 3-time defending Irish champion who didn't concede a point in his last competition, his last nationals competition. I think I beat him by a few points, and then I boxed him again in the quarters, and I beat him again, and that's when I was given the name. So my coach Brown, he's like, "Right, your new nickname's the Prodigy," and it's stuck with me obviously since then, and obviously brought it back.
We always like to ask about nicknames because obviously there can be some very, very funny ones out there. You know, I think there's someone interviewed recently, and it was a friend called him it for a laugh, and they just stuck with it. You know, you've obviously mentioned you're looking to fight, you know, about 5 or 6 times in your debut year, and you'd sort of done like a sort of tongue twister sort of the other day. Well, the fact that you give a bit of it away, but you're back out again the 1st of July. Is that right?
Yeah, 1st of July, Bolton Arena. It's going to be live on Fight Zone, and that's when I'm going to make my first 6-rounder. So I think I'm ready for it. Well, I know I'm ready for it. 6 rounds. I do 6 rounds in sparring. I get stronger every round. That's when I'm starting to break people down. 4th, 5th, and 6th round is when I'm really starting to establish my power, and so I'm excited to have my first 6-rounder.
And sort of, you know, where do you sort of look in your goals and aspirations? You know, like would obviously being based in England, but obviously being Irish, would you still like to fight for the Irish title?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's something I never got to win when I was a young lad, a young amateur. So winning an Irish title has been my dream since I first initially since I started and put laced a pair of gloves. But I think one of my main goals is obviously win the Irish title, but I'd love to fight for as many titles as I can over here. I got my license granted in England, so it means I can fight for area titles and British titles. So pretty much I just want a whole sitting room just full of titles, and I can look back at my career and go, look, this is what I achieved.
So we're just picking this back up. Looks battery died obviously halfway through answering the question, but obviously we'd asked you obviously what your goals and aspirations were, and we sort of mentioned obviously the Irish title. So I guess we'll probably try to do our best to piece it together, but you sort of mentioned that I think area and British titles and obviously Irish titles, but what will come first?
Yeah, I'm not too sure what's going to come first, to be honest. I've again just trying to try and get as much experience as I can this year, and probably mid next year. That's when I'm gonna step up and fight for either an Irish title or an area title. I'm not too sure what's going to come first. And then the ultimate goals then is obviously fight for the British. That's where the money is. British titles, European titles, world titles. Pretty much when it comes to the end of my career, I just want to be able to sit in my sitting room and just look around at all the achievements that I've managed to get over my career, and I'd die a happy man.
Definitely would, and hopefully plenty of money in your pocket as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
With obviously being based in Manchester, do you probably still keep an eye on a lot of the scene, you know, particularly with super lightweight and welterweight boxers here? Do you sort of, not I'm looking you to call anybody out, but do you sort of look at anybody and sort of go, you know, have my eye on you, sort of thing, as you do with anything, you know, you have your eye on somebody in particular? But
to be honest with you, I actually don't. I've not looked at anyone apart from when I'm looking at British level fighting, because that's the ultimate goal. Like when I'm looking at like lads fighting for a British title, I'm looking at them going, I reckon I could take him. I think I could take him. So that's who I'd sort of compare myself to. But I don't know who the area champions are. I don't know who the Irish champions are. So I don't know who to look at.
Had an Irish welterweight champion in quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
But obviously, similar to yourself, people are obviously building themselves towards the levels. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
You probably look at someone that probably passed. You know, certain levels, always Irish titles. You know, I know Lewis Crocker, obviously in Belfast here. Obviously, he's a WBO European champion, and he's been trying to get a shot at the British title, but it just doesn't seem to be happening.
Jeez, it'll happen soon.
It's one of them, I guess. Sometimes if you get the opportunity, you go for it, but if not, you just move on.
Yeah. No, it'll happen for him soon. He's a beast.
Yes, we've obviously come to the end of the interview. Obviously, if your battery had lasted 5 more minutes, we wouldn't have done a cup job.
Moss Anfield now as well. The missus is giving out to me because we're late.
but obviously, just want to obviously finish it off. Obviously, I know sponsors obviously play a massive part for you in the sport. Is there obviously any? We've lost your recording.
Sorry. Go ahead, yeah.
Is there any sponsors you'd obviously like to thank for obviously being involved in and helping you out so far?
Yeah, you put me on the spot now. Trying to remember them. So we got EMC Construction, which is my good friend Manor from back home. Spark Construction, Darren. Trying to think now. There's quite a few of them. U Lockett Self Storage, Julian. Just one sec.
No problem.
Here we go now. So we got Spark Construction, Black Rose Gym. It's Ryan Donnelly, my good mate. He lived around the corner from me my whole life. Julian at U Locker. Obviously Manor at EMC Construction. That's Owen McMahon. Simon Daniels, PT, and also runs Prepped. I got Luke Banter, who's a hip hop artist from America, which is quite a funny one. And Bellhouse Barbers is joining the team as well, so that they'll join me for my next fight. And they're barbers based in Sale.
Fantastic. We lost you. Obviously, had to go to your phone. They double check, but I guess when we put you in the spot, sometimes with obviously sponsors, you don't want to leave anybody out because they play a massive part in what you want to do and what you want to achieve in the sport. So we always like to give you the opportunity, because at the end of the day, it's shout out sometimes they get as to why they come involved and support you. So hopefully they all stay involved, and hopefully you can keep adding to the list of sponsors, because you know boxing's a tough sport. You know, it's a very dear sport as well. So every sponsor plays a part.
Without sponsors and without the backing of the top promoters, you just won't be able to do it unless you're a massive ticket seller.
Definitely, and it'd be nice to do that as well. But look, obviously we know you're off the Anfield now, and we don't want your missus giving you a black eye before you get there. But obviously, thanks very much for tuning in and having a chat with us. I'm sure we'll obviously have you on again in the future. But obviously, I hope you enjoy the rest of your birthday weekend, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you soon.
Nice one, Steve. Thank you very much, mate. Cheers.
Take care.
Pal.
Thank you.
See you later,
Thanks.
bud.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.